There he is.
Hey, my friends, how are you?
I am doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Nice BioCharger you got there.
Yeah, you too.
Got one of those too.
I think alike.
Absolutely. Thanks for
Um,
having me on. I'm honored to be here.
yeah, wow, it's our pleasure. We're excited to be able to connect with you. Before we hop into it, I just want to. Do I call you Dr. Perry or Dr. Nickelston? What do you prefer?
Please call me Perry. That's
Okay,
yeah, that's much easier. All my friends call me that. Everybody calls me that.
perfect. Well, my name is Dakota, so it's great to be able to connect with you and yeah, have this conversation this morning.
Absolutely. Love the name.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, so yeah, for everyone that's joining, we have Dr. Perry Nickelston, who he's one of our amazing clients. You're a chiropractor, an author, a laser therapist, vagus nerve expert. I mean, all of the above. But I guess just I'm not going to be able to do it justice. But you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself and kind of your path into the wellness space?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, my brand is called Stop Chasing Pain, which kind of says it all. So our mantra here is that we absolutely want to treat pain, but we don't want to fall down the rabbit hole of chasing it, which unfortunately people do. And that's actually a sign that we tell people to look for. The more that you have pain that kind of ricochets all over the body like a pinball machine, that indicates that you're dealing with a lot more inflammation throughout the entire system, not just where it's showing up. And then you have to do more of you always have to do more of a full body approach, more of a holistic approach, if you will, which I think that we say a lot, but we don't actually put those things into practice of what we say, because it's very easy to fall back on where something hurts, and you should. So we tell people, start where it hurts, and then they say, where do you look? And then my answer is yes, everywhere else, right? So that's kind of my mission right now, and my brand is to just teach that thought process. I've thought about this a lot because people ask me, oh, you know, what do you do? I don't really say chiropractor because words and language are important. As soon as I say that, you're going to go into this mental file folder of what you think that is. And I'm going to tell you now, you're going to be 100% wrong if you want to put me in that box. Or you go by what somebody else told you that box is, or their experience with the box you've never even been to. You understand?
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily teach techniques. What I do now is to try to teach a way of thinking, because your thinking process influences the tools you choose to use, like this one.
Yeah.
But it also influences your techniques when you have said tools. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the tool in and of itself isn't the part that's going to get you better. I mean, it plays a role, but it's who's holding it, right? Because that is determined by how that person thinks. Because you can have the right tool, but if you use it on the wrong place, you're really probably not going to get the effects that you want. And that's really what I teach, because here's what I find. Here's a dirty little secret, man. Every technique and tool works for someone. Mm-hmm. All the time. It just depends on, is it the right tool at that right moment in time for that right person? This is really important for people to understand, is that you can have everything that that person needs, but in that moment, their nervous system, their emotional system, their physical system may not be ready for it yet. It may be ready for it the next day, right? Because we're living, breathing, dynamic systems where we respond to our environment. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing, because everybody likes to just put something in a box. Okay, you have this diagnosis. Here's what we do with that diagnosis. Well, you might want to put the brakes on a little bit, because not everybody gets to the diagnosis name the same way, which means you can't treat them the same way. And then they say, well, how do you treat them? I'm like, well, that depends on the human being carrying around the diagnosis. You follow? Mm-hmm. So I base it on not your tissues so much, but your story behind your tissues. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that influences how they function.
Mm-hmm.
We call that in medicine your history. And in life, we call that your life. So I know I gave you a long answer on that one, but you know, that's how I begin to think, and that's how I want to begin to reframe it for people so they don't get caught in chasing and blaming symptoms.
Yep.
Symptoms are an indication from your body that it's trying to fight something to protect you.
Yep.
Right? But symptoms are just where inflammation showed up, not necessarily where it started. Here's another dirty little secret. It can be both.
Yeah.
Where it started and where it ended up. But I've been doing this long enough to know that there's never one X marks the spot. It's impossible. It never happens that way. So one of my key phrases that I tell everybody, which will I think encapsulate this, is that no system in the body ever works alone, never gets injured alone, never heals alone. There's no such thing as an isolated injury in the body. There's no such thing as isolated healing, right? It's all or nothing, man. All hands on deck. And what do I mean by systems? Well, we break them down and we name them and we specialize in them. You know, the immune system, the nervous system, cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system. But they all work together. So when you treat one, you influence them all. When you have an issue with one, you influence them all. When one is vulnerable, all the other ones are trying to help it out.
Yep.
Right? So we get lost because we get myopic. And when you go myopic, you're going to get pulled into the quicksand every time.
Yeah.
That's why I like energy, because energy impacts all of the systems, because that's what the systems need. If you don't have energy, you're DEAD, man. You're dead. You transform into a different type of energy, because that's really what you are, is energy. Yeah. It just manifests in a different form. You know, and then when you're gone, everything that you are becomes the energy of something else.
Yep. Yeah, it's never created or destroyed. It just passed on to a different form. So, wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so I that was an amazing introduction, and it's great to kind of get behind the hood there and understand, you know, where this is all coming from and your passion and your belief system. And I guess just a follow-up question from that is, it is refreshing to hear that that's your view on things. And, you know, we at BioCharger wholeheartedly agree with that approach. It's never just the one system. You got to look at the entire thing. And, you know, for you, have you always thought that way when you got into health? Or was there like a realization that really pushed you in that direction?
That's a great question. Well, I've discovered this. You usually come to realizations with a lot of suffering in your life. Because if you're comfortable, why do you want to change anything? Because it's comfortable. You just keep surfing the wave, man, right? But eventually life comes along to teach you something through a tsunami or a reef comes at you. I think Gabor Mate said, illness comes along to teach you something, right? So when you hit a certain form of rock bottom or being broken, mentally and physically and emotional, because you can't separate them. It's all of them. That you have a pivotal moment where you're going to give up, or you're going to learn to not necessarily fight, but choose to see things from a different perspective. Because you have to. Remember that old line of the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result? Oh, yeah. Well, that's what I see in healthcare. We keep slamming people over the head with the stuff that just ain't working because we're getting sicker, not healthier. I don't care what you tell me. I see it, and everybody else sees it. So we have to change what we're doing. So that happened for me, and that's one of the reasons why I got looking into energy systems or energy in general, because I was not getting better from the traditional paradigm, the way I look at things, from my training. Even though it was different than the typical stuff, I still wasn't getting better. So I knew, I'm like, okay, I'm obviously missing something here. And my body is telling me I'm missing something because I'm not getting well, right? So that's when I started to look at, well, I mean, it's kind of hard to get well if you don't have enough energy to get well. And then you look at, okay, well, how does the body get different forms of energy? A lot of it is through food, right? Like if you don't eat food, I mean, you ain't gonna last long.
Yeah.
And then it's the quality of the food.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course it's oxygen, right? I mean, if you don't get oxygen in, you die really quick. So that's a heads up one to do. It's the energy of other people. That's huge. Who do you surround yourself with? There's a saying that goes, you cannot get well in the same environment you became ill within. And I'm going to repeat that again because it's really important. You cannot get well in the same environment you became ill within. And there's different environments. There's your mental environment. That's big. So if you can't get out of your own way or your own head, you drown. But maybe you can, but you're in the toxic environment of someone else in your life as a personal relationship or work or friends that you need to dump quick, fast, and in a hurry because they're keeping you sick. So you should really look into that one, okay? So it's that aspect. It's your external environment. I mean, everything around you that we talk about, the toxins that are coming into your system, all these through some by choice, but a lot through, they're going to come in because you're alive on this earth, man. It just happens. Mm-hmm. And it's the internal environment inside. And I call it the soup that you live in, the milieu, which is the fluid that you live in. Because that's the medium of how everything from the outside actually gets into anything inside through fluid. Mm-hmm. And then when things make their way into a cell, the only reason things happen through a cell is from an energetic process. That's it. You know, through the mitochondria, and then we give it a big fancy name with ATP and the Krebs cycle, blah, 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 all that crap, right? Because you can know everything about how a Krebs cycle works, but you don't know what to do with it. I just want you to know that those environments rely on each other. Mm-hmm. And one of the best ways to get yourself to make a change in your life is to change the environment that you're in. Mm-hmm. You go out, they say go outside a lot, right? To put yourself on this big spinning magnetic rock, thing in the universe that has energy to it, so you can ground. And you take in all those different frequencies that are coming through the air, from the microbiome, from the sun, through even from the earth coming on up. But it's not easy to do that for a lot of people. Sometimes, maybe you can't get out because you're not well enough to get out, or you live in the concrete jungle and it's not conducive to you to go out and hug a tree, right? And breathe your biome. That's why I like the BioCharger, because it mimics that nature in a way. So you can get all those things at the same time to at least get some minimum effective daily dose going in there. Because grounding is huge, man. Let me tell you all the time, if you take your shoes and your socks off and you stand on the earth, particularly in grass that's a little bit moist and wet, mm-hmm. That energy, those electrons go into you from your feet, and they go all through the system. And if you can do it in the morning when you see the sunshine come up, there's a lot of research to say that light spectrum of the light at that time of day goes in through your eyes and your retina. And then from the ground, you practice a little breathing, meditative breathing, show a little gratitude for actually being able to physically do what you're doing, mm-hmm. right? Or a gratitude for something as simple as you're not dead in that moment. That's a big one. Or that you could be sicker than you are, because trust me, you could be. Mm-hmm. Those things add up, and they make a huge difference. They don't seem like they would make a difference, but physiology is all about small inputs can give you ginormous outputs on the other side. They call that non-linearity. Mm-hmm. It's best to compare it to linearity. Linearity is, I guess you might want to say it's from physics, but if you have an input A, output B is the same as the input. So nothing changes. It's like a straight line. Yeah. Here to here. Well, guess what? That's fantasy land. That ain't happening. Right? I mean, you can try that in a lab, but as soon as you get into this thing called real life, you're going to get punched in the face, because I'm like, holy cow, it didn't work like that. And plus in a lab, they study things in what? Isolation.
Yeah, isolate. Yeah.
They take a single cell by itself and they say it does this. I'm like, I don't care if it does that, because as soon as you take it out and you put it in with another cell, it does something completely different. Not to imagine, not to say if you put it in your body with 50 to 60 trillion other ones, then it's going to completely change. And then here's a mind blower. It changes depending on whose body you stick it in.
Yeah.
Right? That's your life story that's coming back to that region.
Yeah.
So non-linearity is how biology works. I'm going to give you an example. Simply putting my hand on your shoulder and showing you empathy and listening to you and connecting with you as a human being doesn't seem like much. But it's so astronomical on the other side of it, of the changes in that physiology and the body chemistry of stress, or the whole of that individual that you're working with. Sometimes that's the most powerful therapy I've ever done somebody, and I didn't do anything to them besides that. And I have a novel idea. How about I do it sitting in front of my BioCharger at the same time? You can double check the wind box right there, my friend. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's how you have to think. So simple and small, and therapy is not simple and small. It's tsunami. Because it's very easy. This is a really important concept for people to understand. When people get sick or under stress, they're overwhelmed. And it's very easy to overwhelm an overwhelmed system.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't do too much, too fast, too quick, too soon, even the good stuff. Because even good inputs are therapeutic stressors to the system. So what's your tolerance level? What's your threshold for stress? So the more that you're under that you can't adapt to, the less you can tolerate. That's the person where I say hi to you and you turn around and you scream at me in my face because you're right on the edge, man. But there's what I've learned with the BioCharger. It's not about energy. It's important, but it's about your capacity to absorb the energy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why with the BioCharger, I tell people is that more isn't necessarily better. Better is better. So you have to tiptoe in, because I can do a huge amount of therapy to me, but your body is saying, dude, I appreciate the love you're sharing me, but I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
And so what it does is two things. It does nothing, which means it doesn't change. And it says, I'm staying right here where I'm used to being because this feels safe to me.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you keep pushing it, it's going to tell you it doesn't like it, which means it's going to push back and you are not going to do well.
Yeah.
You're going to get worse, or you go through a detox reaction, or so you're either going to hit a wall or you're going to hit a new level of misery you never thought you could hit, even when you're doing good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first got the BioCharger, you guys told me, so, and I got the training on it, which was great. They said, go in easy. Just do like 5 minutes, man. That was it. Because initially I did like 20 minutes. But when I did the 5 minutes, I said, this is crazy, man. I feel better when I did 5 than when I did 20. Because I had to listen to my own words. I just told you.
It's funny how that works.
But I was so excited. I'm like, oh, I'm going to jump in front of the thing. It's really cool. And I'm staring at the light and I'm drawn in and it's kind of mesmerizing. And when you get the lightning bolts at the top, I mean, that's even more cool. But I had to do what they teach you in emotion-based healing. It's called titration. Easing in slow so you don't blow up the lab. You understand?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You put one drop of chemical in another drop, not 2 flasks full. Because boom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was a great deep dive into all of that. And so I appreciate, understanding kind of your path to all of it and how you really understood and came to that realization. Just a couple of things that I wanted to build upon there. You talk about that ability to be outside and in nature. I mean, at the end of the day, nature is this unbelievable healing mechanism that we all have access to. But, unfortunately with the modern day lifestyle, it's becoming harder and harder. The stat that we like to share is from the EPA in 2021 found the average American spends 93% of their time inside. So really only 7% of our day is spent outside and in nature. And you kind of brought up a few points is, a lot of us live in a concrete jungle or, we're walking around with rubber soles. So that connection to nature isn't really that true connection that it once was. And so we do look at that as an issue. And on top of that, you mentioned, we're seeing the trends in health going in the wrong direction. And, we see the same thing. So another stat that we focused in on in 2017, we found that 45% of adult Americans had one form of chronic disease. So that was an alarming stat, and, realize, hey, something's wrong here. And now fast forward to 2022, now it's 60%. So we've continued to see the trend go in the wrong direction. Even when we thought 45 was too much, now we're up at 60. So it's just definitely in line, and realizing that something has to change, and, understanding that there are all these amazing tools, and they're, I don't have, unfortunately, I wish I had the science mind that you did. I come from more of a business background, but that idea of compounding, small things can make a huge difference in the long run.
Yeah, listen, man.
I mean, you make small investments, and in the future, those investments turn out huge. And same thing for your health. So making those small
don't
changes.
let that science mind crap
Yeah.
in your head. It doesn't mean anything. I know some of the smartest people in the world that's not the answer.
That's true.
It's actually going back to, trusting your heart, your gut, your intuition. It's tapping back into awareness of your body.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are only aware of their body when something hurts. Think about that.
Yeah.
Because pain is actually a way that your body is a form of awareness. It's tapping you on the shoulder saying, I need you to change something. And then we say, change what? Well, yes, is the answer. I don't know what it is. I just know that you need to do something different than you're doing now, because that's what pain is. My definition of pain is a request for change.
Mm-hmm.
That's your body. It usually asks you nicely in the beginning, very subtle, but we blow it off and we ignore it. And that doesn't end up with a nice, healthy relationship. Try that with anyone in your life. It ain't going to work out well.
Yeah.
Or we smother it and we just say, well, if I don't hear it, it's still not there. That's all sorts of wrong. So you sometimes need to do that, because I don't want you to suffer, but I need you to also look on the other side of this. How about you do both at the same time?
Yeah.
Right? I think Jack Cruz, who I follow a lot, who is a neurosurgeon and talks a lot about light coming into the system, he said something that resonated with me, that the further you get away from nature, the more lost you become. And that's what we've done. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't take a lot of nature to make a big, that's non-linearity, right? Yeah. So why I like the BioCharger, it's like nature in a box in a way. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take my fix when I can get it. So then you can start to feel a little bit better, and then venture outside, right? Every human is already born with this innate sense of your body, but we lose sense of it. Yeah. One, because we listen to all this outside gunk noise from healthcare professionals that are looking at things from a very myopic standpoint. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. I'm saying things to some people that might not be ready to embrace this or hear it yet. What that means to me is that you haven't reached the level of suffering enough in your life to get there yet.
Yep.
At some point you will, right? Because I have a saying is that you can't change something until you become aware of it. So stuff changes all of the time. That's called life. But if you want to play an active role in it, it needs to cross your radar. Mm-hmm. And that's, people say, what's my first step towards getting better here? And I'm like, realizing that these are options that you can do.
Yeah.
Right. And then taking small, little, tiny steps to do it. Doesn't have to be big, giant, huge steps, because that's very overwhelming and that's very intimidating. And we look at the goal and we forget about the journey. It's the journey, not the destination. It's the process, not the goal.
Yep.
Because you may find that your goal changes when you're focusing on the process. That means that the moment that you're in. So I try to teach people somatic awareness, body awareness, when they're doing something like the BioCharger. Like, you could sit in front of the BioCharger and read. That's great. I love it. You could sit in front of the BioCharger and talk with other human beings. There's a novel idea. How about that one?
Yeah.
Remember what those are like? Real people?
Yeah, human connection.
I don't like to sit in front of it with an electronic device, because first of all, it's probably going to go bring all over the place from the frequencies, which is kind of cool to see.
Yeah.
But I usually have people either sit or lie down, change body positions, or stand. So if you see next to me here, I've got my standing desk.
Oh,
So
nice.
I stand next to my BioCharger, and I'll usually read something then, but I'll do some somatic awareness things. Somatic just means body. I'll breathe, and people say how. I've done this answer a lot, and it's yes. Just breathe different ways. Usually in through your nose and out through your nose, so you can get more movement in your body and in your diaphragm, because your mouth is for eating, not for breathing. Or I'm just going to really begin to pay attention to where I feel tightness or tension in my body as I'm breathing. Or I'm just going to randomly start moving body parts in any kind of direction I can think of, small little movements. Like I'll move my right ankle. I'll make hieroglyphics with my right ankle, which means I'm going to move it every which way you can think of. And then using my left ankle, it's like, hey, man, I'd like some of that love too. Can you come over here, right? So it's just small things like that. And what I like about that is that when you're moving and you're breathing, usually where you are is where you are, which means that you're not thinking about the crap that happened to you yesterday or in your past. And you're not thinking about what's got to come up later in the day. You're in the moment. You're in your own matrix. And when you do that, when you're always in that moment like that, you'll find that your stress level begins to decrease, right? Because you're not going back to the stuff that you're telling yourself stories of, or you're not telling yourself stories about things that haven't even happened yet. And one of my friends, Dr. Bo Lotto, who is a neuroscientist, we're doing some joint projects together. He said this very like top of the mountain wizard Zen moment, like in a fortune cookie. Said that your present is your future past. So think about that for a minute. Like, if you're going to be talking about how miserable your life is tomorrow, well, that's based on what you're doing right now. So why don't you just focus on the now, and then what comes up is through your own making, right? Because that's the dirty little secret. It's all through your own making. It's not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens to you. It's the meaning of what happens to you. So Bo also said this. This is something that many people should write down. You can't change what happened, but you can change the meaning of what happened. So I took that with my illness. I took that with my pain. That happened to me, right? And you can fall into an abyss of a sinkhole and woe is me and why. And that's actually part of the healing process, honestly. It's going to happen. But then you say, okay, what's the meaning behind this? Like, why did I go through it? What's it trying to teach me? And I thought to myself, yeah, it could be a lesson for myself, but maybe I'm going through it because I'm supposed to come to the other side and be able to change the meaning of it for another person. So it's not just about you. It's about someone else. And what you learned is that the body and the cells of your body, they love that energy of giving, right? Of volunteering, of community, of connection. The earth and people are hungry for it. That's one of the reasons why with the zombie apocalypse called the pandemic, everybody became disconnected. And when you became disconnected, what increased? Isolation, which is exactly the opposite of the way humans are designed to do, or cells are designed to do. So then stress went up. And when stress goes up, incessant stress, never-ending stress you can't adapt to, that's been found to be the #1 cause of chronic disease. Like, you name the disease, I don't care what freaking name you give it, it's still going to be the baseline of chronic stress and underlying inflammation, because most people are living in the biochemistry of stress.
Yeah, I mean, again, it kind of goes back full circle. You talked about earlier on this idea of the environment that you're in, and making changes within that environment can have huge effects on your health. And, even that can come looking internally. You talked about looking at a situation differently of, well, was I put in this situation because now I need to give more, or now I need to find solutions for someone else. And so that, you know, it all kind of plays in with one another. And
Yeah.
one thing you mentioned there was just this idea of stress. And I know something you're really interested in now is the vagus nerve. And so telling us a little bit more about kind of that,
well, the vagus nerve is kind of cool for sure, man. A lot more people are talking about it, which is really great to see. And the reason it's growing is because when you begin to awareness of the vagus nerve, when you pay attention to the vagus nerve, holy cow, I feel better. Yeah. So that's good, right? And there's so many ways that you can influence the vagus nerve. But breathing does it quite nicely.
Yeah.
Going in and out through your nose stimulates the vagus nerve. Why? Is because one, it changes pressure in your body, in particular called intra-abdominal pressure. That's pressure in your belly. Because when you breathe in and out through your nose, this muscle at the bottom of your rib cage called your diaphragm, it pushes your organs towards the earth, towards the floor. They don't fall on it because your pelvic diaphragm, your pelvic muscles catch it.
Yeah.
And then when you exhale, the muscles, the organs move back up. And it's like a piston, bing, 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 bing. And then that stimulates the vagus nerve because the vagus nerve goes to the organs. Right? So people don't know what the vagus nerve is. You got a left one and you got a right one. And it's actually the longest nerve in the body. It's the most important nerve in the body, in my opinion, because it controls the inflammatory reflex. That's how your body responds to inflammation. That's kind of big. Right? Is it a big response or a low response or like dead response? And it actually comes from a part of your brain in your brain stem. And so it's called a cranial nerve. Cranial just means up here. And when you change your breathing pattern, you also change how much oxygen and carbon dioxide you have in your system. And when you can do that, you get a much better delivery of oxygen to the tissue because it's based on carbon dioxide. And they found that the carbon dioxide will actually stimulate that vagus nerve. Mm-hmm. So that's why one of the things they tell you about calming yourself down is to, find your center, right? Slow your breathing in, slow your breathing out. An interesting thing is that the longer your breath's out, the more you stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, the more you relax. So just make your exhales a little longer than your inhales and do it through the nose. And whenever you start to focus on breathing through your nose and you focus on the timing of the exhales, you're no longer thinking about what stressed you out. So, it's called a distraction technique when you do that. Right? So the vagus nerve is really, really critical too. Breathing is probably one of the best ways that you can influence that. Singing does it quite nicely.
Really? I didn't know that.
Well, because who doesn't love to sing, first of all?
Yeah.
Maybe by yourself, honestly, because if you're in a group, you might get the stress response. Like singing in the shower or your favorite song, and because that's a way of expressing ourselves. But it also, singing vibrates your abdomen and your sternum, and it changes the position of how you move your tongue and your throat. So you actually vibrate the vagus nerve along its entire course here.
Wow.
So that's a wonderful thing to do, right? Two simple things that can make a big difference. We teach people how to do it more, and how to do it more from a manual perspective, where you can put your fingers or different things on areas of a body that are known to stimulate the vagus nerve a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So that's why massaging your abdomen is really powerful. There's something I learned in Eastern medicine when I studied in Asia that they say if you massage your abdomen for 20 minutes a day, you'll change your life. Wow. That's amazing. And people say, massage it how? What do you think my answer is by now? Yes. just get in there. And another place that you get the vagus nerve, as I show people, is if they can see it, you go right up to the top of the neck, right behind the angle of the jaw, right below your earlobe. There's this little space, little pocket. And that's important because that's where the vagus nerve actually comes down your neck from inside the skull. Wow. So that's a place where people have a lot of tension because of posture and then this way and looking at phones, and it gets really tight. And then the vagus nerve gets compromised there. and then it influences how the nerve communicates up and how it communicates down. And people will usually notice it's very tender in that region.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons it's very tender there is that's because that's the area where the largest lymph node in your body, in your neck sits. And the lymphatic system is in charge of getting rid of all the inflammation and toxins that are in your body. So if you have a lot of inflammation in your body, you'll typically cause inflammation to the vagus nerve itself. And when you rub there, remember how we said that all the systems work together?
Yeah.
You get the nerve, you get the fascia, that's the connective tissue, you get the lymph node, and you get the blood flow in and out of your brain. That's kind of a big deal, right? That's like a really big deal because your brain needs like a lot of that. So if you're choked up here, you're really going to suffer in the neuroinflammation in the brain big time. And the brain takes 20% of the available oxygen and 20% of the available energy for your whole body. Right?
That is amazing. I didn't even know those statistics. So that's,
yeah. I mean, you know, that's kind of a big deal. So if you just sit now in front of the BioCharger, if you have one, or you go outside, you can breathe in and out through your nose, get some massaging in your abdomen at the same time, and then go up and rub right here a little bit for a couple minutes, and then stand up on the ground or in front of the BioCharger with no shoes on and just trying to jump up and down a little bit on the balls of your feet to move everything in your body. And you're kind of like being a little kid again too, because I bet you if you do that for a little bit, you're going to start to smile.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And
Funny
that's
how
a win.
all those small things come together into one bigger thing, and you don't even really think that you're affecting your health, but all those small things add up into, you know, that, what was the term you used? Not the linear, but the
Non-linear. Yeah.
Non-linear.
You know, well, effective things don't have to be complicated.
Yeah.
Humans like to make it complicated because they feel it's more valuable when they make it complicated. And I'm like, well, no, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
You learn that in time through getting broken.
Yeah.
You know, it's those small little things we call TLAS, tiny little action steps. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know who said it, you know, because you never know when you look at quotes on the internet these days. It said, if you don't think something small can make a big difference in your life, try sleeping in a room with a mosquito.
That is true.
Right? I mean, that's so true. It can change. That's nonlinear. That's what that is.
Yeah.
And nonlinear with what I just showed you is breathing in and out through your nose and rubbing the spot. And you're like, man, come on, that's it? I'm like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, just do it and then sit back and put your seatbelt on because you're going to see some big changes happen as long as you stay consistent with it. It's about consistency. Keep showing up.
For sure.
90% of success is showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't expect, especially when you've been living with these issues for so long, you can't expect it to change.
Somebody asked right there on the BioCharger recipe I recommend. Well, I use them, pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
But holy cow, you got a nice one in there for the vagus nerve.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
There you go.
We have a great blog post on it as well. So we gave some of the tips that you just gave as well. And so definitely recommend looking at that. But everything that Dr. Perry just recommended, you can do right next to the BioCharger. So I myself will now be applying some of the things that you just shared. I think those are amazing tips.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know we had 30 minutes here, and I don't want to take up your whole day. I could keep asking you a bunch of questions and hopefully continue the conversation outside of this. But this has been amazing, and I hope everyone that tuned in got some helpful insights. I definitely did. So we appreciate the chance to connect with you and learn about everything that you're doing because you know, for us, we look at that as the way of future medicine, and hopefully that's where the trend continues to go.
Well, thank you very much. I'm grateful and honored to be on the show. I mean, I love the BioCharger. I use it every day personally for myself, and my family does it. And my dog, Bella, usually chills out down here. You know, so I hope people enjoyed it and got a few things that maybe can help them. And we've actually got a vagus nerve course coming up this next weekend.
All right.
It's an entire 8-hour course. If people want to tap into that, they can get that through stop chasing pain, right?
Okay.
So we'd love to have you there. But again, thank you so very much. And, when this thing ends, I think it's a really good opportunity for people, if they can, to jump in front of their BioCharger, or why don't you go outside out there, take your shoes off, do something fun out there. That's a win.
Yeah. We're with you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Perry. Enjoy the rest of the day. And then, thank you again. This was awesome.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a blessed day. Bye.
Bye-bye.